special guest. Alafair Burke is the Edgar-nominated New York Times bestselling author of 15 novels of suspense, including The Ex, The Wife, and Find Me, and co-author of the best-selling Under Suspicion series. A series adaptation of her novel, The Better Sister, starring Jessica Biel and Elizabeth Banks, was recently greenlit by Amazon Prime Video and will begin filming in June. It's done. It's done. I need an update. A former prosecutor, Burke is now a professor of criminal law. She recently served as president of the Mystery Writers of America and was the first woman of color to be elected to that position. She currently lives in Manhattan, East Hampton. And Aline H. Cogdell, who is our moderator today, I'm sorry, I was going to have to Aline has been moderating several of our author events throughout the series. She'll be moderating another one of our author events next Friday for March 7th for Carter Wilson, who wrote Tell Me What You Did, which is just recently named Barnes & Noble's February pick for thriller and mystery category. And without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Aline Cogdell and Alafair Burke.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming. Thank you for being readers. Thank you for supporting libraries. And thank you for buying books if you can. So let's get on with it. Alafair and I have known each other for a while. We've been on several panels together, so it's really good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Welcome back to Florida.
And we're doing this today. Thank you guys for being here.
I'd like to take the author and the audience back to the beginning of your career and start from there. Now, you were born in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Your family moved to Wichita, where you grew up.
Yeah.
You built a solid career as an attorney. You spent several years in Portland's deputy district attorney, and then at a private firm, before moving to New York to teach at Hofstra University, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What drew you to become a lawyer and then to become a writer? And were they like commingled?
No, they were very separate. I don't think a lot of writers do these events and they're like, I just knew I wanted to be a writer when I was a little kid, like they came out of the womb, like holding a pen and making notes. I was not that kid. As I recall when I was little, I either wanted to be a telephone operator, like in those old movies where it looked like they would eavesdrop, or I wanted to be a hairdresser. I guess I wanted to gab a lot or something, but as I got older and was serious about it, I think what drew me to the law was a sense of justice and being able to help people. And I'm one of those people who believes in rules still and enforcing them. So, I think that's what drew me to it. And I think part of it was there are people who they wanted to be writers and their parents are like, you shouldn't be a creative person, like it's a stupid job and you should be a doctor or a lawyer or something. My father was a writer. And I was the fourth of four kids, and I was the one who liked to read the most. And he decided that you're going to be a writer. And at first, that you're rebellious at heart. So I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be a writer. I'm going to be a lawyer. So it's kind of like I'm going to do the opposite of what you do. But when I went to law school, I still wasn't sure, what I wanted to do with that law degree. It just seemed like some of you might have kids who like you get out of college and it's like work it as a barista or go to more school. And I'm like, I'll go to more school and law school. And it seemed like a good way to, have a career and also be able to help people. But when I got there, it surprised me that I really was drawn to criminal law. I didn't expect to go, that wasn't my expectation when I went. I thought, I wanted to work at the Southern Poverty Law Center, go into constitutional law. But I think I just got drawn into all my criminal law and criminal procedure classes, which is what I teach now. And so that took me to the district attorney's office.
So you're still teaching?
Yes.
In addition to writing great books.
Yes.
And what drew you, though, into crime writing, crime fiction?
Okay, so I think it was the lawyering that got me into the writing.
Okay.
I think to some extent. So I was a big reader always, and a big reader of mystery novels and crime stories, kind of all crime all the time, true crime, fictional crime, I teach crime, all the instant. But when I was at the DA's office, I was still consuming all of these mystery novels. One of the things I would notice is, with a couple of exceptions, a lot of crime novels, when you get to the procedural part, and specifically when you get to a DA on the page, it's almost like you can just skip the next 3 pages. They're always like cookie cutter and like objection, hearsay. There's a lot of exposition, like you need to get a warrant and this is why. And it doesn't. And I started to notice. Really, that's not my job at all. The stuff I do at the DA's office is a lot less cookie cutter than that. It's a lot more interesting. That DAs are in court more than your average attorneys. They're still not in court very often. The most interesting stuff is the stuff that takes place in the hallways and off the record in chambers and in the police precinct. When they're interviewing witnesses. When they're interviewing suspects. So it's that. I got into my head, I was like, oh, if I were going to write a mystery novel, or maybe I didn't even think of myself as the writer yet. It was more like, I just want to find these writers and tell them to fix this. Make the DA more interesting, or cut them out altogether. But I think along the way, it's like that kind of light bulb went off of like, oh, maybe it would be kind of fun to write a novel set in the world that I work in. Like, oh, if I take that and change it this way and that way and match it up with this other thing, I kind of had an idea about what happens if you did it, why, which is kind of all you really need to start. And so I started what became my first book right when I left the DA's office, and then I finished it a couple years later after I was teaching.
Well, let's talk about The Note, which is your latest one. I love this book. I loved it. It has everything. It has, it's a bit of revenge. It's about female friendships, terrific setting, and a really solid plot. I reviewed it for Shelf Awareness. In my review, I said, skilled plotting, punctuated by sharp dialogue, keep the note churning to a surprise finale. And I stand by that. Yeah. Now, the note revolves around 3 female friends. One's a law professor, Anna McAfee. One is an heiress, and one is a musician. And they're planning. They want a drama-free weekend in the Hamptons, and they're waiting for a parking space. Help tourist towns always have the tourist parking. And it's what we all do. You turn your signal on. You're letting people know you staked out that parking space, and they better not. It's just a polite thing to do, right? And they're waiting, and all of a sudden, this entitled guy, in a luxury car, just pulls right in. Well, the trio are incensed, as any of us would be. I would be, And they decide to leave a note on his windshield. It's just supposed to be a plot, just a little plot. Just a prank. It's a little prank. And it ends with, and he cheats. Saying, and he cheats. And that kind of puts everything into play. And as you say in the book, a simple little note, but the potential for so much damage. And certainly that sets off a lot of events. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, if you're the kind of person who can wait patiently with your turn signal on and then have someone else come in and just brazenly steal it from you and then smirk at you and then just shrug it off and pull out, I'm not lying, and some little pity, that car called a mission. And she got out, she kind of smirked, and she had her hair boots and her short shorts, her neck, and we were just like, we didn't actually do anything, but we started talking about the notes we would like to move on as far, and we did start writing notes and things like that. And one of the notes was really mean and said, he's cheating like you, and he always does. And then on the way home, I started thinking about, what if you did, think about a young couple getting in the car as finding that note. He's cheating on you like he always does. That's probably going to start something between the two of them. And she's going to be looking at his phone, and then she might find something. And then I don't think it's too much of a giveaway to say that at some point the police wind up, something bad happens, and the police wind up interrupting their chill weekend at the beach. Sometimes we're trauma-free. Yeah. So, and the concern is that we did a little small note of what we did
instead of just like starting a whole argument, what if you start with argument between two of the wrong people, filling time and it goes out?
But we all wanted to do that. I think of that scene with Kathy Bates, where she's waiting for the parking space with this young teenager's mom. Oh, and she just rams that car. I'm older, I'm rich, and I've got better insurance. Revenge is always kind of fun. So one of the things I know about your books is you often show strong relationships and strong friendships among women, whether friendships or sisters or even just women who've never met each other, but they have an affinity for each other. Can we talk about that a little?
Yeah. Some of my closest relate. I grew up with family with a brother and two sisters, and I'm close to all my siblings, but there is something special about the way sisters support each other and care, reflecting on money for each other. And a lot of my friends are women, and our friendships, is a comedian. She gave a proper credit. I can't remember who it is. Some of you may have heard this a bit before, but he jokes around and like his wife will go play golf with one of his friends, and they'll come home, and she'll say, "How is he? Fine. What'd you talk about?" Nothing. How's Judy? His wife. Oh, they got divorced. What? They got divorced? Yeah. Did he say why? No. I think a lot of women are. Your friend doesn't get divorced and you don't know about it. You know all about it. You know before he knows it. And, I think when women are close like that, as these three women have come, there's a complexity to it because it's not always easy, right? To be a really good friend to somebody doesn't mean that you always tell them that they're right. It doesn't mean that you always tell them what they want to hear, right? I mean, sometimes it means having to help the person maybe realize they're not right, or there's another side of the story. It takes a lot of navigating, and I think a lot of effort goes into those relationships, and people have expectations of that mutual, and so I think I took these three women and think of themselves as very close, and they think of themselves as like, I trust you over everybody, ride or die. But then when the police are knocking at the door and stuff doesn't add up, they start looking at each other like, how well do I really gotta put you through? And how much can I trust you? And, like May, who's kind of the main character of the three, she has a fiance who's saying, what is it when these two women, like, what did you get up to with her in East Hampton? He wants her to throw them under the bus. She doesn't want to, so her loyalty to kind of pull apart.
Yeah, I also love the fact that, they are friends, they love each other, but they're also kind of frenemies. I thought that was a big part of it. And they are ride or die, but...
Yeah, well, they've known each other a long time, so they got to know each other. May and Kelsey are the same age, and they were campers at a camp for the arts in the summer. So they really only see each other in summer, but then they went to college near each other. We came closer to college. And then Lauren is a few years older than them. She was the youngest, kind of cool. She was the head of the music department at the camp. And so as the girls get older, they wind up going back to the camp to work college during like the economy clubs in 2008, and nobody could get jobs. They couldn't get jobs, so they went back to their camp, worked for the summer, and they got out of college. And so something happens at the camp that kind of brings them close together. They stay in contact as adults, but they are three very different kinds of women. They live in three different places. They don't see each other every day, and it's been 15 years. And so they've moved kind of in and out of each other's lives as people do, right? Kind of get close, and then you lose touch, and then something happens, and you get close again. And when you think about any group of three friends, it's usually not a group of three friends. It's three groups of two friends, right? It's not equal, right? There's somebody who's sort of the middle of the Venn diagram to some extent, but there's somebody more the glue, or you might be closer to one of the friends when it comes to talking about your marriage, for example. The other one isn't married, for example, and then you might be closer to the other one when you're talking about your jobs, and the other, your jobs are pretty similar, right? So, and I think when the three of them are together in real life for the first time, it's a long time,
they start to feel those tensions of like, oh, am I the odd one out here? Like, am I the third wheel? Do they know something I don't know? Right.
And I thought that was so real. And also the fact that they pick up right away if they're not having seen each other for a while. I have friends like that. And I love that. You know, we keep in touch, not every day, not every week, not even every year. When we're together, you know, it's like this.
Yeah, just like old times.
Yeah, it really is. Very blessed with that. They also come with a lot of baggage for each. They call themselves the cancel crew. Let's talk about the baggage entrepreneurs and why this name they give themselves.
So together, if you're do text threads with your friends and you kind of give them cute things or whatever, so they when they started texting with each other a lot, like a year earlier, just so they both started raising ball. I'll explain. They started making up nicknames for themselves, and they landed on the cancel crew because they all felt like they got, cancel culture. They all kind of got caught up in it in different ways. And the ways that it got caught up, it is Kelsey was the one who's from the wealthy family. Her husband was murdered several years earlier in a botched robbery, and no one was ever arrested. And these people on the true crime message boards where I'm a lurker. I don't post, I'm a lurk. Everybody's convinced they know something on those message boards, and a bunch of people on the internet who don't know what they're talking about have decided that this, wealthy woman must have killed her husband. And she's become kind of withdrawn because of that. Like, she worries that when people Google her, like, she can't go on, but terrible. I'm so married up. I don't even know what the dating apps are called. She won't go on the dating apps because, like, if people because of the minute they find out who she is, they Google her, think she's a murderer, and nobody wants to date a murderer. Some people do. So she's kind of very private about herself for that reason. And then Lauren, who's a very successful woman, she's the head of the Houston Symphony. She kind of gets outed for being in basically having an affair with a wealthy man in Houston, and people start saying that she only got her job because this rich guy vouched for her, and it said she only got her job because she's a DEI hire, even though she's an extremely talented person. And so she kind of gets churned up through the media and becoming this sort of trope that she doesn't deserve her job. And then what brings them kind of back together is May's bad moment, and she basically has a panic attack on the subway, and someone videotapes her. And this one of those videos that, we've all seen those videos of people having, a bad day, let's say, and people, strangers, like mocking them and judging them, and she kind of gets put through the viral mill. They call her the name Karen has been hijacked. So Twitter kind of goes after her and tries to get fired for her job, saying that she's a bad person. And so they've all been through this experience of having a complete strangers judge them, right? As for people that and label them something that they're not. And so when that happens to May, after the subway video goes viral, her friends kind of reach out to her and say, like, we've been there too in different ways. Twitter's not real, because of text now, but the internet's not real. The number, stop reading your comments, turn off all your accounts, that's not, go back, who you are, you're not that person being depicted in that video. So that's kind of how they get back together. So, but they've helped each other through that. And it's when the police investigation ramps up, though, that experience that they went through, I think creates a certain paranoia on their part. Oh no, it's happening again. Like, we don't want it to be exposed. This stupid note, like, what's that going to look like? It's going to reinforce these impressions that, we're not shameless people. And it sort of affects how they respond to the police investigation, you think? Absolutely.
The setting is also, I think, very important in your book. Now, the Hamptons really come alive in that. I don't know anything about the Hamptons other than what I see on the Real Housewives of New York.
My house looks just like. It's a whole other part
But you live in the Hamptons, right? I do, yeah. But it has to be different in every area. So
Yeah.
tell me about the Hamptons.
Yeah, I've had parts of the East and of Long Island known as the Hamptons in my last several books, I guess. This one probably more than any of them before. One, I love the area, and I've got to know about it, so that made me set things there. But it's helpful because even if you've never been to the Hamptons, you have an idea, right? And the idea of that is very aspirational. It's fancy. It's a beach, just not a lake area, a pretty place where people go for fun. And so the juxtaposition of having dark things happen as setting a crime story in that picturesque place is appealing. But the real Hamptons is so different than what people have an idea, right? And so it kind of goes into the same way I'm trying to say, you expect a fun weekend with your girls in East Hampton, and the next thing you know, the police are at your door. People might think of East Hampton as just this place for the celebrities to hang out, but the real Hamptons is a year-round place, right, with a year-round economy, and kind of the three segments of the population there are sort of like the city people who come in the summer, and then you've got like the original founding families there. It was a fishing and farming culture, and that still exists, but it's also now supplemented by construction and stuff like dealing to real estate. And then you have a lot of recent immigrants who are also doing a lot of work. And so these kind of three populations, like the economy only works with all of them, essentially. And there's tensions among them, but also alliances among them. So it's been an interesting place to set the books. Like in the beginning of the book, I think that detective is working, who winds up working the case that brings him to the three friends' door. He's also working a robbery where like a $15,000 handbag was stolen. Handbags were stolen in like a house or something. And part of it is like, I'm not sure I'm going to solve this case.
Perhaps they deserve to have that 50,000 handbag. Exactly. When you start a book, what is your first inspiration? The plot, the setting, or your character?
I have to have a character. I think I had the character of May just been in my head for a while, but I didn't really have a scenario for her. And there's lots of things about her that, she puts a lot of pressure on herself. She's the daughter of a Chinese immigrant, who's a single mother, and education for her is for trying to get out, and so she always had to be perfect, right? And she had to be a good girl, and she always puts that kind of pressure on herself. She's also got a lot of resentment inside of her that's kind of finds its way out sometimes. And so I kind of was playing the idea of this character and why she might freak out on the subway, give them some things that she had gone through. But that was a crime novel, but I just found her an interesting character. Like, I've got to look basically for what's a situation that is going to make that character even more interesting, or I kind of put her to the mill. And then I need to step, right? And so when I went on my girlfriend's trip, and we got out of the parking space, and we thought, wouldn't it be fun to mess with these people? I was like, well, but what if they messed with the wrong person? And then wind up on the wrong side of the police investigation? And I was like, oh, I knew the right character to put this thing was me. And that's kind of where what I need to have happen is I need the right character in the right setup. Separate stuff.
When you start a book, do you know the ending? Do you know where you're going to go?
I know who did it and why.
Okay.
I don't know how that leads you to a veto. That makes sense. That's like, I know the beginning and the end, and then I just make myself miserable at my desk every day trying to write pages at a time where eventually it's going to connect up. There are all the big twists, like I can't tell you what it is. No spoilers. But there's some point you find out something, and everybody I talked to that's the thing where everybody was like, I was like, what? That's where you were like, wait, what? And then, oh. So I kind of know those big moments, and then that usually gets me, it gets me there. Once I get 3 quarters, and it's like a book comes right to itself, because as long as you know how it's supposed to end, your thought is, make it go there.
In 2014, you started a collaboration for Mary Gibbons Clark, and you had, I think, 4 books with her.
No, I think we did 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I researched.
No, well, I could be,
Tell us about that Saturday. I mean, she was such a gracious lady. Tell us about that experience.
so I got a phone call. It was like, you have to go to your character's point of view, right? Because I don't know what happened first. And then I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was part of the publishing team. And she had had a book called I've Got You Under My Skin. And one of the characters in it was the journalist named Lori Moreland, who is the producer of a television show reinvestigating cold cases. And Mary and her editor had an idea to spin that character off to do a recurring series, a book a year kind of situation. Mary at the time didn't want to only do a series though, she wanted to continue to do her standalones. So the idea was to like her always somebody, another author, right? So you could share the love of the series together. So, you know, I was asked if I wanted to be with Mary. She'd read some of my books and was a big fan, and I'm like, what? She knows who I am. And as a fan, like, but, you know, do I want to meet with her and have lunch on her phone and talk about the process of maybe working together? So we had the easiest yes ever. I put way more thought into what I wore to promote for lunch than I ever put into any date ever. I'm like, nothing in this closet is good enough. But we had a really nice lunch that I had read books close, and we kind of talked about what that series would look like, how it would build out Ward's world, what the rest of the chapter should be like, and what kind of cases would she work. And so I had found a case that happened in California for inspiration that kind of talked that through. But then we got to the part of, okay, how is this logistically going to work now that we think we like each other or we think we can make this work? I'm like, well, let's just write this opening chapter. You can write the opening chapter every book with nothing but a setup, like, and we'll do that. And we passed that back and forth to see if the voice worked, like if the, you know, if we were butting heads, does it sound like a person as opposed to, oh, she wrote that paragraph and she wrote that paragraph, and it worked. It definitely did work. But then we had to talk about how, now what do we do after the first chapter? And she said, well, you outline? I said, no. I said, did you outline? No. It's like, what do you do? I just sit down and write until it's done. I'm like, yeah, 2 people can't do that. Take the time. So I think what convinced us we could make it work is we kind of had that same conversation about the characters. The plot comes from characters. They almost give you the outline if you really think it through enough. So we just kind of mined the characters more and more and more. And then we kind of, what we call an outline, and you know, we've come up with like a 30-page thing that had every character, every motivation, all the big scenes in it, and then start writing from that. So we did that for 1 book, liked it, and agreed to do 2 more. Liked it, agreed to do 2 more. And then does that get to book 5? Yeah, so that now I know about them to her. And then she, we were still exchanging pages towards the end of the novel 2 days before she passed away. So, yeah, she passed away February, late February, I think the time of this, late February 25. So one of the last big gatherings I went to was a very Dykes Tomorrow service for her, and it was kind of fitting that she was such a loved person and that people could get together, and so everything changed, and we were able to do that to celebrate her. But in any event, it was quickly agreed that she would obviously want me to finish that book since it was pretty much done. So I finished that. I got that over the finish line for us, and then I taught her family. Said that she wanted me to continue, and we had talked about the next book in the series, so I wrote that one and still co-authored by us because I still think of it as it's still her work, right? It's still her creation, and that we had also talked about doing a sequel to Where Are the Children? Oh, so I wrote that too, and based on our ideas together. So I'm sure most of you, that, you know, iconic novel, the idea was to find out where that family is now, like where are those kids? And that's the really creative type. Where are the children? Yeah. That was see them grow. Yeah.
Are there any plans to continue?
But, you know, but I think that was that anything I did now would be, I mean, we did talk about some ideas, but not in the kind of depth that we did where the magic happened. It would be me writing it. You know, that, and, you know, I people really love this. The people who really love those characters might want it even if their media isn't on the, you know, or words are on the page, and I do know how they replicate that blended voice, but at the same time, it's kind of, you know, it's maybe time. Yeah. The part of it's, you know, it's a family decision, it's a publishing decision, it's all of that.
Are any of your books ever inspired by a true crime?
Yeah, not all of them. My first book definitely was, I think a few other ones that are. But the thing about that is, you know, I had somebody ask me the other night, like, well, how are you allowed to base a book on a true crime? And like, why wouldn't you have to like buy the rights and story? It's never, there might be something about a case that inspires the story, but it's not like you're just, and you can read the heck out of any kind of case and then base a novel on it. It's not like a journalistic account of the case, right? That we have to novelize everything. So usually what I do, and you would never know the case. Like, I don't think you would know which real cases went into which books because it's just something about it that is interesting to you as opposed to you're not taking the actual facts, right? That it was like, this was the motive and this was the weapon and this is how they caught them. It's something about it that's interesting. Maybe it's the motive that's interesting, but then you give a completely different type of person a similar type of motive, a certain particular component. So, for example, BTK, or I'm just talking to share this about, I grew up in Wichita after my parents decided to take me away from Southern Florida.
Nice quiet town.
A nice quiet town where there was a serial killer running around killing people in very horrific ways, and all of that was on local news while I was a kid growing up. And my character, Alafair, grew up in the Wichita camp, who's a detective. She's now a New York City detective, and she grew up in Wichita when there was a serial killer active, but it's not that guy in my book, right? It's a different person, but the reason why I gave her that background is that fuels the way she thinks about crime and the impact of that crime upon a community. Like, that people go to Wichita, Kansas thinking like, oh, it's so safe and quiet, like, we'll white picket fence, a good place to raise your kids, right? It's nice and quiet, and then meanwhile, you've got this horrific things happening over a span of years, right? And that kind of affected the community, and they fall the line, right? Like, it's that kind of story. And so my book's not based on BTK, right? It's based on the impact that a serial killer has on a small town. So there was a year that there was a woman who was murdered in New York. She was 21, and she went out for her 21st birthday to a bar with her friend in Soho. And after it got pretty late, her friend was like, hey, you know, it's probably time to go home. And it's her 21st birthday, and she's still having fun, and she's like, you can go, I'm just going to stay and have one more drink. And she stays by herself, and she wound up talking to the wrong guy and got killed. And I based a book just based on that. And the rest of the case, who did it, how it was done, completely different. But the reason why that tragic crime had such an impact on me is I've been that girl, right? I've been either one of these girls, like we would in younger times, like you go out and one wants to go home and one wants to keep the party going. And I've been the girl who's left with a pit in my stomach, like, she's gonna be okay. Yeah, she'll be okay. And I've been the dumb one who stayed, you know, and wanted to leave. Not the bad happened to me, but could it have? Sure. Like, yeah. So it was just the idea of somebody like, because we're getting up the chapters, like the best time ever. And she's out with her friends, like just having the best time in New York, and she's from a small town in Indiana, I think. And then through all it.
That you mentioned, like Ellie Hatcher, whether Samantha Kincaid, who I'm sure had a desk near you, yeah, the attorney. But lately you feel free on standalone. Yeah. Why the change, and would you ever go back to a series?
I like series books. If you read them, it's part of my lots of reasons to love writing with Mary. That it was nice to do that series together. when you're reading a series book, things like, you know, a visit with a friend, you're like, oh, it's Kinsey Nolan's back again, right? I might get to spend a few days with her in this book. And so I love that feeling of it. To make the book personal to the main character, though, in each book is hard. So their only stakes are it's their job, you know. It gets a little challenging. So a lot of the stories that I've been wanting to write recently are from the perspective of the people that get wrapped up in the police investigation, the investigators themselves. But even by most of my series books, I think even just starting with my third book, even the series books change perspective. So you've got kind of the police perspective for about half of it, and then you've got someone else's point of view for the half of it. So even my standalone books, though, I think that there's a procedural rhythm to that, though, because I just know what a criminal case looks like, and I know that the way the cop knocks on your door the first time he knocks to you is different than when he shows up with a warrant. And so I think I kind of use that knowledge to almost provide a face to the book, even when it's not on the page or, you know, on a board the way around page.
And in the course of writing a novel, the characters have to have a arc, and they have to change.
Yeah.
As an author, how would you change since your first book?
I think I got better. I think I got better. So now I try to do something give this much effort and get worse. You know what I mean? It's like golf, like it seems to get worse. So I think I'm better, but I think the way I got better is I think I'm more confident as a writer, as a storyteller, than I was when I first started. So when I first started, as it is for most writers, if you write a book with no promise anyone's ever going to read it, let alone pay you for it, or publish it or share it with anybody else, it's just a leap of faith. It's pure audacity to think, you know, maybe somebody might want to read this someday, and if not, I'm going to have a lot of fun, sit on my computer, make a step up for a while. And so I did all of that aspect, but as I was doing it, if you're kind of asking yourself, who am I to write a book, right? And I hadn't taken writing classes. I was just some lawyer who found some things interesting and a big fan of mystery novels. And yet here I was trying to do this thing to help people go to school, MFA for, do writing groups. And I'm just going to write a book and see what happens. And I think because of that, I was like, well, what right do I have to write a book? I went back to that feeling of, well, I'm the one who can tell you that when the DA shows up, they would do this and not that. And so I think when I look back at my first book, which I still really like a lot, but I want to take a pen to it sometimes because I think there's a lot of lawyer stuff in there that's real interesting if you're a criminal law professor, but doesn't necessarily add anything other than, oh, this person knows a lot of law stuff. So nowadays when I find myself like doing something on a page that's very law professor-y, or some cool courtroom trick, I'll ask myself, okay, if you're the reader, does this add to the plot? Does it add to character, like so telling you something about the character? Or does it add to the setting? Does it, you know, make it seem more realistic? And if not, I'm just like, oh, well, that was an interesting point where I deleted. So I think it keeps it moving faster. I think they go a little deeper with characters than I used to. I've also sort of taken more time. I'm not, I haven't been doing a book a year on the standalones because the standalones take a lot of work. A series book, you already know a big characters, right? So that gives you a head start. But when you're creating 10 people per book and you want all of them to seem interesting, takes a little more.
Which is like this, if there's an overlap between being a lawyer who has to tell a story about a crime to a jury, and a crime writer who has to tell about a crime to readers. And I think you kind of answered it, but can you elaborate?
Yeah, no, if you think about it, a lot of crime novelists are journalists, and a lot of us are lawyers. And I think what those have in common is, one, you're using your writing license a lot. Right? A lot of people in their jobs, in their daily life, the only writing they do is an email or a grocery list or something. So you're writing large documents frequently, so those muscles are working. But also, we think about what those journalists and particular courtroom members have to do is you're telling stories, right? You're processing a lot of information, you're processing facts, but you're not just writing those facts down like a stenographer, right? You have to come up with a narrative. You got to come up with an angle. You got to come up with a story. And if particularly think about how a story is told at trial, you can't go beginning to end necessarily, right? You can't go from I want to shop it. They give you a structure. You have to go one witness at a time, right? You don't get to scramble the pieces up like, post it there. It's on a like the storyboard book, right? And that makes you have to take all of that incoming data and have to ask yourself which one of these witnesses is going to be the right one to tell that piece of information to the jury. In what order am I going to do this in, right? Because it's not always temporal going over. Right? You might start with the person who found the body, and then you go 3 days earlier to the person who saw the victim, how to find the defense, right? So you got to play along with structure and think about how you refill stuff. And so I think that helps me a lot on the thing. It's like, I know the different why, but then how am I going to tease that out? Like, you're my jury, basically, right? How am I going to keep you interested and they can surprise you along the way? And that's all about structure.
I have one more question before I open it up to you all. As a writer, what are you most proud of?
It's some doozy. It's like, come on, I don't like to brag, so when you ask me, you're so proud of it, you're just like, then I'm awesome. No, I think I'm proud of what I've done over the course of the 22 years and because I don't just write my own books. I try to support other writers. I do the institutional work to kind of help. I've worked with, I've been on the board of the Authors Guild, I've been on the board of Mystery Writers of America, I've done stuff with pens so the books don't get banned, and I've also tried to help other writers develop their careers along the way. So I think I have a reputation as a pretty good egg, so that I'm probably most proud of it. And then I'm proud of the body of work I created. I think I've shown that I can write, I don't write the same book over and over and over again, and just sometimes people, either they just can't keep doing it, they hit those 3 that just can't, they're like, I'm tapped out, can't keep doing this, and I haven't tapped out, but I even have never gotten to the level of a book where I'm like, just stick my name on it and they're gonna sell 200,000 copies, I'm not that level yet. Notice I said yeah. But I think even if that were to happen, I mix it up. I don't think all my things are the same. I can make a very different.
And that's a thing about mystery writers. I go to a lot of mystery writers conferences. They are the nicest people. They really are. They get any aggression they have out on the page. If you come to an Alafair and she's with other writers to say, oh, I love your books, she should say thank you. But also, here's my friend Mark and here's my friend Allison. You'll love their books too. And that's very indicative, I think, of just about every mystery writer, except for 3 that I've met.
You're going to stay afterwards. We're there until.
So I have more questions, but I'm sure you all have questions. So who wants to go first? Who has a question? Yes, ma'am.
You skillfully songwriting or I'm some self-exam.
I teach at Wichita, which is in Madison County. I live in Suffolk County. I'm still a full-time faculty. I'm a full member of our faculty at the law school, but my classes are only in the fall. And I worked out that arrangement several years ago when it turned out that you can't write a book a year on your own, a book a year with Mary, and teach full-time without maybe having a mental breakdown. You don't know how it has to make something change. So that was a nice, that's a good schedule for me because I like being a law professor. I didn't want to have to quit.
So you have a long ride, so
yeah, it's a couple hours.
This lady back here has a question.
Yes, thank you. I don't need a microphone. A slight deviation, but as both a law professor and a writer, are you able to recognize when perhaps your students are using the ChatGPT or AI or AGI?
That's relatively new. I don't teach any writing classes anymore, and my exams, they don't have access to that kind of stuff, but it's definitely, as we talk about it a lot, about,
are there ways to use it legitimately without having it do your homework for you? I think I could tell, yeah. I mean, it was before robots cheated, it was just people cheated. And I know what you're like in class. I know what your emails look like when you email me saying you haven't done the reading and need to pass, and you definitely did write that paper. And it's like you go into the electronic library and it's all big sets with big words. And it's like, yep, you can copy that right out of the paper. So you could. Did you guys see that thing that Curtis Sedenfeld did with the New York Times where she wrote a short story and then the robot wrote a short story? They kind of used the same prompts. It was like a 1,000-word short story, a beach vacation, something, whatever prompts were. And hers was a even really good short story, and the other one was just weird. Like she almost like, you almost heard it in that kind of weird robot voice. It's not there yet, but it may be.
Other questions? Okay, now you could, on this side, I'll come back to you all. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Do you really play spelling bee?
I do. Queen bee every day. In the book, the three of them do the New York Times spelling bee, which is a puzzle. It's total nerd alert. But they help each other get to Queen Bee, which is just the elusive title you get if you get every single possible word. And so they like Venn diagrams, like overlapping. So I do the Queen Bee I do spelling bee every day with Angie Kim, who wrote Happiness Falls, the great writer, the great writer, and Janelle Brown, who's got so the three of us kibitz all day long about all kinds of things, but it actually started when we decided that we all wanted to get Queen Bee every day. So I think we've got an unbroken streak like years.
Was how was that in changing a book into a movie? You said that you had said earlier that the book was.
Oh yeah. So The Better Sister is being adapted by Amazon Prime. If you think about it, if you watch, sure you've seen one of those 8 episode or 10 episode series. That's such a great way to adapt a novel, because when you take a novel and you reduce it to a 2-hour film, you're just taking a scalpel tool, like you're just cutting the parts out of it, right? And just keeping a few components, right? You're gonna lose, it's impossible to not lose some reader's favorite part of the book, right? When you adapt it into an 8 or 10-hour story, you actually build a world, right? You don't have to change the parts of the book you love. You get to add even more, right? Because that book had been 500 pages, well, it got 5 instead of 3. So I've been really happy with it. It's done. Yes, it'll be out before too long. But it's good.
You're gonna find another writer to write it.
You can do it either way. I've written a screenplay before, and I don't think I was very good at it because there's no movie. I did enjoy taking a scalpel to it. I was like, oh, if only I could have 8 hours instead of 2. But for this, after that experience, I chose to sell Better Sister as a TV show instead of a film. The wife was sold as a film. So The Better Sister was like better to add to, and they had a really gifted showrunner in mind. His name was Olivia Milch, and I let her put a writing group together, and I was just a consultant. So I would send out and read the scripts after they had done, their magic. So it's been interesting for me to follow the process really closely. It was just, as a writer who likes to study writing, I see it's a very different form of storytelling. It's like, because, books have a lot of internal monologue stuff, like you're inside the heads of the characters. Unless you're going to have a movie that's 50% voiceover, you kind of can't do that. So you've got to find another ways of shows people that visually instead of using their actual thoughts. So, but it did a fabulous job, and excited for it.
There's a gentleman out there, I'll connect you. Yes.
Yeah. Good. 2 parts. Do you read correct novelists? And if so, who do you wait for the next book to drop?
That was one of my coming up questions.
Where do you say?
Thank you.
It's always hard. It's so hard to answer because you're surely going to miss something. But the people that I got automatic must read, and I usually get early copies. In fact, are Michael Donnelly, the Harlem Hogan. I'm a Reacher preacher too. I got all of my Reacher series, and Laura Lippman and her Miss Her, Karen Slaughter, Lisa Unger. That would make myself stop.
Yeah. And do you prove your father's?
No, we did not read. Of course, I read my father, James Lee Burke. If people don't know that, my father is James Lee Burke. Yeah, we don't. I don't send him anything early. He doesn't send me anything early. It's probably why we get along very well.
This lady right here, and I'll come back to you all.
I'll take Aaron for fun saying,
Yes, sorry.
and two-part questions. What type of name is Alafair?
Alafair, we think, is Welsh, but it's in my family. It was my father's mother's name. So my father's maternal grandmother's name, and I was originally supposed to be named Suzanne, which is kind of a Cajun version of Suzanne, which was on my father's side. And I was the fourth of their four kids, and they were all named after his father's side of the family. And my grandmother lobbied them and said, you have to name her Alafair, after my mother, who died when she was a young child. You never gave homage to my side of the family. And so when people ask me what Alafair means, I say it means an appeasement. And my grandmother was lobbying long distance, but back when you had to pay for a long distance phone call. And my father is the most stubborn person on this planet, except maybe his daughter. And the fact that he changed my name because his mother was calling long distance. I think back on it like, wow, that woman has some power. But yeah, so our family shares that. Okay.
I've also heard it as a southern name too.
In the United States, yeah.
Then a serious question. I discovered that to get a book published with library, so no competition to you. All right, and for Richard Poetry,
Yeah.
you need an agent. Did you get an agent?
Yes, I had an agent. I still have an agent. I think the way it works with the traditional publishing houses is if they just open their mailbox to everybody, that there's no editing when it's done. All they do is proceed it. So they kind of use the agents as a funnel, right? It's kind of a filtering. So that if the idea is if you can't get an agent, it's probably not going to be something that they want to publish, right? So it's kind of like the first point of entry, and part of why some people have gone to self-publishing is maybe that's not true. Maybe you can't get an agent and you got a really commercial book. So you don't need an agent to self-publish, or maybe some independent presses might not rely so much on agents, but the big publishers here, yeah.
The gentleman right behind you, yes, sir.
The person outside your team was in spot.
Yeah.
So what was that effort to appease?
So my father introduced that character as Heaven's Prisoners, and he finds a girl who has survived a plane crash, and he suspects that she's probably not been brought here illegally, but she needs medical care, so he takes her to the hospital, and he's kind of like, somebody help this kid, and they're like, okay, if you're a dude with a kid, it doesn't look like you, what's going on here? And he kind of says, he makes it up, and says, she's my adopted daughter, and what's her name? And he has no idea what her name is, and so he gives them his mother's name. And so it is a family name, both to his character, Dave Robichaux, and then our actual family. But it does show that writers don't really think about the effects of their books. So it's not real, right? Until other people are reading it, it's just junk you're writing on the computer. Not junk. It's your jiggles on the computer. But when he did get it published, he called me back when he still had to pay for long-distance phone calls at college. Because, I'm getting ready to the second Robichaux book, I'm doing a sequel, and that Dave's going to have an adopted daughter, then her name's Alafair, is that going to bother you? And at the time, I'm 19, I don't think anybody reads my dad's books. I'm like, what do I care? It wasn't that, but I was kind of like, why do I care? I don't know the name. I did say, does she die? And he said, no. I said, then that's fine. So I think, spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure I wrote a promise that she's never going to die. I didn't realize that she was going to be around for the next, it's been 35 years. So everybody thinks that, I'm that kid. And I'm like, I was never that annoyed. I probably was. But he obviously has taken some of my real life stuff and has put it in the fictional Alafair. So kind of, I've got a younger, more Cajun me living in his books. So
with all of his right, but he and we decided the lawyers to arrive and he said this speak to arrive at
when I was growing up, he always told me I was going to be a writer. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be a writer, you're a writer. So
Everything at the same time, one at a time, times really shut everything else up and make right. How long did that come?
Yeah.
The first song.
this is going to be an answer that frustrates you. So I started to actually write my first novel when it was the summer off, when I left Portland and moved to New York. And I thought, I've always wanted to start that book, and I've always wanted to learn how to play golf better. So I bought golf lessons, and I bought a computer to start my book. And so I had 3 months to work on it. I was studying to pay a bar anyway. So just that. But I had my time to myself when I did those things, and 25 years later, I'm a lot better at one of those things than the other. I was still a pretty bad golfer. But I did finish my book. But once I started working again, it became very hard. And then I finished it when I began teaching, and I had a lot more time away. It's not even more time, but getting someone who's like, will help you. When I couldn't write, when I was working full time, it's not like I didn't have a few hours to myself outside work. It was just that my head was not a place where I could write. Like, by the time I was done, calling 30 different domestic violence victims that day, half of them were scared to death, and half of them were like, but I love it and I'm gonna go back to it. I couldn't come home and live in a fictional place. I just wanted to eat my dinner and watch Seinfeld and go to sleep. So part of it is finding not just time, but time where you feel like you can focus, right? And then even if you write just a page, even if you write a paragraph, if you do that over and over and over again, you will eventually have a first draft. And it might be kind of a mess, and it might not be perfect, but then it's a lot easier to make it better than it is to write it the first time. So the lack of 5 hours for you to write is not a reason to write nothing, right? So and then don't go back to the beginning every single time. Then you'll never. So then what I do is, if it's Wednesday, I sit down at the desk, I read what I wrote Tuesday. I do not go back any earlier. I read what I did the previous day, try to make it better. That process will get me back into the story. Like, okay, I remember who these people are, I know the sound, I know what I'm supposed to do next. Then I write what I write the next day, rinse and repeat. If you keep going back to the beginning, you'll never finish. If I'm a quarter way through the book and I realize, she needs to talk to this person, but I want her to have met this person before, I don't go back and have that person into chapter 3. I put a note to myself in a separate file regarding, meeting Joe on page 100. Joe needs to appear earlier too. And that's what you do after that. Does that help? You do that? I think we're going to eventually.
We can take one more question, if there's any. No? Okay.
No,
Please.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Were you in a relationship with the NYPD? Did you ever have access to the one police center in their data research center? No police plaza?
So I worked as a prosecutor at Portland, Oregon. My work as a prosecutor was not with the NYPD. I'm familiar with that and comp stat and that stuff. And then when I was writing the L.D. Hatchet series, a friend of mine actually worked in the precinct. He was the lieutenant for at my local precinct, which was her local precinct. So that was a nice resource to have.
Thank you. Please buy her books, which are already in. Yes.